Welcome to Getting Started at the K12 Online Conference. My name's Rodd. I live in Kamoka, Ontario, and I'm taking you for a walk this morning to talk with you about connecting. And I've got a number of friends that I've asked to join me in this presentation. But the topic is a big one. It's a variety of tools, it's a variety of strategies, and it results in amazing connections with educators all around the world that have a variety of degrees, I guess you'd say. And so I've asked my friends who I have connected with to share with us at the outset some ideas about the tools that they're using to connect with people and how they affect their professional lives and their personal lives. And through those stories, we're going to learn about what it's like to walk sort of the path that a whole bunch of people normally walk in their professional life, which is hanging out with the people on the path who live in the neighborhood, who are people that they know. And what happens when you meet people that are off the path. To do that, I get to take you to one of my favorite spots where I'd like to go to think, Kamoka Provincial Park. But before I get there, one of my friends who I know in this local area, Jessica Swift, she's been introduced to this online world through a tool called Twitter. And she's met a whole lot of people, maybe you have too. And I just asked Jess to share with us a little bit about what that's been like for her.
I started using Twitter because I wanted to become a better teacher. I wanted my classroom to be a better place. In the beginning, I was directed to some of the greatest minds in the profession, and I was far too shy and way too intimidated to talk to these people. So I just followed their tweets, read what they were talking about, and what was going on in their classrooms. Eventually, I started gaining the confidence to interact with these people. I started participating in the online discussions that they were involved in. The nice part about Twitter was, if I said something silly or something I didn't like, I never had to talk to these people again, or I never had to see them. But I was really surprised when what happened, or what ended up happening, was they took me in, they embraced me into their world. And from that point forward, they became real people to me. They became friends, and I started forming relationships, and it became more than just about learning. It became something about forming an identity with a group of people that get me.
So Twitter's kind of the first, for me, it was an entry drug for meeting a whole lot of people. People that were interested in the kind of things I was interested in, and I sort of discovered this tribe that was out there. And in wanting to share my ideas with this tribe, one of the tools that I used was podcasting. Basically recording audio messages and putting it on the internet so people could subscribe and listen to it. And when you do that, it's kind of a lonely experience unless your audience talks back to you. And I was lucky enough to have some people talk back to me who, it turns out, were doing pretty incredible things. They just weren't talking about it. And it's that sharing of stories that sort of helps everybody move forward. So I want to introduce you to Mark Ray. When I first met him, he was at West Point, and he was training cadets, and podcasting opened his eyes to a few things that, are better shared in his words. Meet Mark.
Hi, this is Mark Ray. I am an active duty military officer in the Army. I'm currently serving at Fort Bragg, where I get to jump out of helicopters and do airborne operations, and I'm still connecting and teaching and collaborating with soldiers across the force. I initially met Rodd back between 2006 and 2009 when I was an instructor at the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York, in the Department of Physical Education. So what Rodd did for me with his podcast was initially inspire me to continue to listen. At first I was just an audience member, a lurker. I started to participate more by calling in. Then we actually did a phone interview, and I was a guest on the podcast. I was so humbled when Rodd invited me to join Teacher 2.0 and be a guest. It just really springboarded my creativity to a new level. And once you start giving input and you start feeding the system, it's just such a rewarding feedback loop. You're feeding it and it's giving you energy back. It's the feeling of connectedness when I first heard my voice on the podcast, just my audio. It was a one-way communication, but it just felt so connected. This connection and interaction I had with the Teacher 2.0 podcast really inspired me and challenged me to bring similar ideas and innovations and technologies to my own class. And that kind of drove me deeper into wanting to be a producer and start creating this type of content. That's when I developed my own podcast, started doing the wikis, and started really using technologies and collaborative, synchronous, interactive forms of teaching in my classroom. I started out just listening to podcasts. I started interacting with those voices over the interwaves and internets. I started to do voice-to-voice, face-to-face, and eventually I became the producer. I became the creator. It's a wonderful way to connect, share the conversation, invoke thought, and spark creativity. Every day I'm excited to be a teacher, to be a father, to be an Army officer, to be living in this world of connectedness and utilizing technologies that bring us closer together.
While you may know people by their ideas and sort of a shared vision for what teaching in the classroom might be like, you might also really appreciate getting to know the people. That happens through a number of other tools that are available for free that you might choose to participate in either by watching or looking or by diving in and sharing about yourself. My friend Jabiz Rezdana, who I met in China of all places, is now, where is he? Are you in Malaysia, Jabiz? Anyway, I'd like you to tell us about Instagram.
Every morning when I first get up, one of the first things I do is look at my Instagram feed. Instagram is one of my favorite ways to get to know people who I kind of know already online in a much deeper way. Whether it's through Twitter, Facebook, or real-life friends, Instagram gives me a glimpse into the lives of the people I know in a more rich and deep way. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, so I guess that means an Instagram is an entire novel of my network.
So you get off the path a little bit and you discover that there are some amazing people out there doing amazing things, and you're asked to take a risk to go where maybe you've never gone before and to share information about yourself. Is it worth doing it? Is it worth people knowing about you, about your family? Photos help do that, and so too does a voice. There are a couple of other tools that people are using these days to sort of connect closely with one another. I'd like my friend Jess to talk to you a little bit about voice. She's one who you can find on Instagram. She shares her ideas on a blog. But when you hear her voice, you'll go, there's something about that quality of knowing the person, what they actually sound like. There's some value in that. When we first met, we had an interesting discussion around what accents sounded like. I'm going to play just a little bit of that for you, and then we'll splice into Jess's talk where she shares in a manner she's very comfortable with some ideas about voice.
Okay, this is an accent test, right?
Well, I don't really think that I actually have an accent. It's just apparently I do when I'm in a room with people from other countries.
No, Jeff doesn't have an accent.
No, I mean, from Seattle, I'm only 2 hours away from the Canadian border, so it's kind of.
So he gets the...
I'm only 2 hours away from the Canadian border. And that simple thing is my voice. Now, there you go. My words come alive a little bit more, don't you think? A whole new dimension is added when you can hear my voice. So I could tell you a little bit more about myself. Like the fact that I recently went to this very far away place called Canada for an experience called Unplugged, which was great, mostly because of the connections I made to the other people there. I'm soon going to another faraway place called, there we go, Hollywood, to a conference called Story World, where I'll be speaking about designing experiences for families and kids. I'll be in Hollywood for 5 days and plan to get famous in that time, so watch this space and all that. So, did you feel any more interested or connected to me because I was able to explain that to you in my own voice? I hope I was able to give you an example of how it could. Now, it's one thing to read about someone or have a conversation over instant messaging, but when their voice, see, I'm a really bad drawer, but this is a symbol for voice. When their voice comes into play, they suddenly become more real. I think so anyway. For me, I feel a different level of connection when I know what someone's voice sounds like. After that, any tweets I read of theirs, on Twitter, for example, actually carry their voice for me as well. So I think that's pretty cool, which actually means that my Twitter stream is full of different accents a bit, really. And that's pretty fun as well. So you can hear people's voices and share your own on podcasts and webinars by creating an audio post on your blog with a tool like SoundCloud, and of course by Skyping. Whatever it is, don't underestimate how you can make a stronger connection with people by sharing your voice and listening out for theirs. Then, of course, there is seeing them. But that is a whole other level.
This idea of walking and talking is something a friend of mine does in spades. Darren Kurapatwa is out in Winnipeg, and it so happens he was meeting with another colleague of ours named Rodd Lucier from Thompson, Manitoba. Quite a distance from Winnipeg, quite a distance from Ontario, and yet I met both of these guys at Unplugged 2011 and met Rob again this summer. But meeting these people face to face changes your relationships with them in a way that you can only know if you experience it firsthand. One of the ways that comes close to meeting face to face is using video, where you're capturing audio, imagery, personality. And to demonstrate that, Darren took a little bit of video on my invitation to talk about video and how it impacts relationships. So here's a little bit of their conversation in Winnipeg.
This little video series that I started, this while walking thing, started off as me just trying to find a way to capture what I was learning each day, like just try to force myself to do a little reflection and then share it. And Social Cam has made that really easy. Someone will say to me, while I'm walking, there was one I was really happy. And some guy walking by on the hall says to me, I don't want to see any more bloody videos of how happy you are on the internet, because he's having a bad day. He's just pulling my chain. But then someone else will say to me, I'm looking forward to today's video. And I'm like, oh wow, so people are watching. And then the other day I got a tweet from Stacy Roshan who said, at Kurapatwa, really enjoying your video series, which was kind of cool. These small little bits, these small little actions, visiting the school and talking to someone, it's the personal connections, I think, between people that facilitate that sharing of small bits. But I think it's like you said too, it's the small bits that
I tend
we
to
share.
take a picture and say what the kid's doing, right? Or I see somebody doing something in music and whatever, and I kind of wonder if anybody's watching, but I don't know if I'm doing it for my own digital record of what I'm seeing, or whether I want people to see what we're doing. That's what I'm kind of hoping, is they see some kid doing something, and then they say, I wonder how you do that. Serendipity of what happens. Like I told you before we started recording, that I sent out a picture of a video. It was an Animoto that one of our teachers made for our 50th, and then somebody says, oh, that's cool. And I said, like, who are you, May V?
Yeah.
Well, I'm May V from Copel, Texas, and I graduated from 50 years ago. I was in Thompson in
That's
Westwood
awesome.
School. I graduated from Artie Parker. She graduated in 1977, and she says, yikes, you know.
Wow.
But then what happens because of that, at our meeting today, we're down here for an admin retreat, I say to Jonathan, the current vice principal, well, this May V's from Copel, Texas. He said, do you think maybe she'd Skype with us? So I DM her, you know, do you want to Skype with Westwood? So next week, she's Skyping with Westwood School. So, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know what? And I think that's the point of everything we're saying here is like share small things, little things, regularly, and all sorts of good things come from that. Cheers.
Now, in the online world, much like the real world, there are places where communities gather. They might gather around hashtags or conferences or online courses even. But the poster child for online communities, as far as I'm concerned, is DS-106.
DS-106 grew out of a course on digital storytelling by Alan Levine and Jim Grimm. And Jim put together this way of taking audio streams and publishing them live to the internet. And that place is the DS-106 radio station, where digital creatives, free spirits and thinkers and sharers get together to share not only their love of music, but their love of creating and doing really creative things. If there's something interesting happening in the lives of those people, you'll probably hear about it on DS-106. A few months ago, I was doing a lot of reflecting about this idea of relationship building and the different types of relationships we have with people online. And one of the things I did is I put the ideas down and initially in a Google document, and I had a friend, Zoe Brannigan-Pipe, who teaches in Hamilton. I had her help edit and flesh out what some of these ideas were all about relationships and the different degrees of relationships. But when I posted it on my blog, an interesting thing happened in that the people who I connected with there gave me a little bit of feedback. And one of them, the teacher in Florida, Sylvia, no, I'm not sure she's in Florida. I think she's in Florida. I'm going to have to double check that. But Sylvia Tolosano, who goes by the Twitter ID Languages, responded to a question I posted about whether this sort of categorization of relationships might be useful in trying to introduce people to this online world that we've been in for a number of years. And she turned the information into an infographic. This is what it looks like. Although they're presented in an order, there is no true guaranteed order to the relationships that you'll build with people online. Depending on the people you connect with, the tools you use to connect with, the number of contacts you have in that online world, your relationships are going to vary from individual to individual. And with you, you'll be seen in different degrees by others who are in that space. So the order doesn't matter. The words don't matter. Just the idea that there are these different degrees, and you can call them whatever you like. But let's take a look at them as a starting point. So this idea about sharing a lot of yourself, whether it's your voice or your photo or video, can be pretty threatening. I want you to know that a great way to step into things is to just share ideas and share text in a safe way, whether it's through Twitter or by commenting on someone else's blog. You don't even have to blog yourself to put your ideas out there in the mainstream. Have some kind of identity and be comfortable putting a few words out there. That's the first step. And you'll find yourself connecting with ideas, and those ideas will connect to people, and soon those people will be real to you.
So, I can say welcome. You're about to embark on a journey that will bring you into a world that's got all kinds of tools, all kinds of amazing people, and the relationships you build are all up to you. Start somewhere. Start by listening and paying attention to conversations. Maybe eventually you dip your toe in and start engaging in that conversation. I know I can promise you one thing, that if you do come in, there's a risk that you may encounter true friends. They may not exist in your time and space, but they'll exist in your mind and in that virtual world. And if you're lucky enough to meet them at conferences, your relationships will go places you never dreamed possible. Thanks for taking the time. Enjoy the rest of the K12 Online Conference. I got a little bit of editing to do.